Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachCom. This week, we hear from Danny Collins, the safeties coach from Minnesota, as he shares how he got started as equipment manager, the value he places on working hard in everything he does, and why his experience in the AFCA 35 under 35 was so valuable. But first, a word from CoachCom.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachCom is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachCom.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Collins.
Coach Collins, what's going on, man? How are you?
How we doing? I'm doing awesome. Awesome.
Good, man. Well, you look all smiles like you might just have got married or something, man. Is that the case?
That is the case. Yep. So about a week ago. So freshly married, and I said we're going to wait for the honeymoon after the season. But it was a great time.
Well, congratulations, man. We had to have a little small talk before the podcast got rolling. You meet this significant other here in 2020, obviously COVID year. Talk a little bit about the timing of it, I guess.
Yeah, our first date was September 2nd of 2020. So in that COVID season, and usually we'd be playing a game, and because of COVID and the Big Ten getting pushed back, our season got delayed a little bit, and had a weekend and, took my shot, and the rest is history.
That's awesome, man. Well, you kind of told me that beforehand about getting married. I didn't have a plan to ask really any questions about this, but, once again, I was just trying to drop some nuggets and some learning pieces. Obviously, having relationships outside of the game, finding that significant other, or, whether you're dating somebody, prior to kind of getting into business, I think it's always interesting because the hours and the time commitment and the fact that, kind of once you get the ball rolling at the beginning of the season, it's really nonstop until December. And everybody doesn't understand that. Everybody can't quite get acclimated to that. Like, what was the process of kind of explaining, like, hey, typically in the fall on September 2nd, I'm not ever going to be at this bar or hang out again, right?
Yep. So it was definitely, a challenge to start. First and foremost, her name's Maria. So she's a wonderful woman. And that first, year that we were dating was that COVID season. So even that, it wasn't like a typical season. I mean, the hours were still the hours, but there was some, differences and some challenges. And then, getting into the 21 season, she really got a feel for what it was going to be like.
Right.
And she loves it. And, obviously, you want to be there more for her, but she gets it. She's a true football wife now, and hanging out with the other wives, and they've been great too. Everybody on her staff and their wives have been so welcoming to her. Heather Flack has been awesome with that as well in terms of that transition. And she getting into it, she wasn't a huge football fan, and now she's ready to throw the TV at times when we're playing away games and things like that. So she's bought in now.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, congrats again, man. Well, let's go ahead and kind of dive in what I did have planned for you. I appreciate you sharing that. I kind of always start the podcast off, except if you're getting married or just had a kid. I typically start the podcast off with the first question of, when was that point in time when you knew you wanted to be in this great profession?
From a very young age, the game of football has been a huge part of my life. I went to my first college football game when I was 3 years old. Really, ever since then, I've always wanted to be a coach. My dad, growing up, he was my basketball coach. He had a huge influence on me of the coaching aspect, and just watching him and seeing how he was able to motivate us. And even with me as his son, being the point guard, I was the one that was probably coached the hardest. And for me, that took me to another level. And I thought, man, that'd be just a cool profession to do where I can take people to that level, day in and day out. And, really, I don't have a memory where I didn't want to be a coach, ever since I was a kid. And, you think about kids and, they always dream about being the star player or the quarterback or in the NFL. My dream was always to be a coach. And I developed that at a very young age and just relentlessly pursued that.
Yeah. Speaking of relentlessly pursuing that, you go to Western Michigan. Your first year on campus, from my understanding, I might be off by just a little bit, but it's almost as soon as you get there, you walk over to the football offices and you try to get yourself into the door. Just talk a little bit about what you did and how you were able to kind of get your start in the profession, as a youngster, as an 18, 19-year-old.
Yeah, so I toured a bunch of different schools, and when I got to Western Michigan, I really honestly I didn't know much about them. I didn't know much about the MAC conference or who they played. And we had a guy in the neighborhood. His name was Tom Harrington. He's also a St. Rita High School alumni as well. And he actually opened a restaurant in Kalamazoo, and his son played for the football team. And it was his last year, was my senior year of high school. And I remember meeting him and him, asking me, hey, is there something, that you want to do on the football team? He said, I could, get you a job as an equipment manager. And for me, I had no idea what that meant, but I knew that it was that I had an opportunity to be a part of the team. And from that moment on, I said that was going to be my foot in the door. Arrived on campus for, fall camp, which was different for me because, the rest of the student body isn't there as well. So here I am as a, true freshman walking into this thing. And I just remember after the first practice, I worked with quarterbacks. And I remember after the first practice calling my dad and saying that, this is going to work. I'm going to be a coach after this. So, for 2 years, I worked as an equipment manager. And for me, that was awesome because I was able to, you're setting up the drills and things like that. But then at practice, you're able to watch the coaches and watch how they, react to the players, how the players react to their coaching styles. Everybody has different styles. And for me, that was just so, valuable for me to just watch from afar. And then my junior year is the year I became a student assistant coach. That was with Coach Cubitt, who was the head coach at that time. And I worked with the quarterbacks, which was another, I was an equipment manager for them, and then being able to now be a student assistant and see the game now from the coaching lens, being in meetings and things like that, that was huge. And then, my senior year is when Coach Fleck came in, and then they moved me to defense. And after that, I fell in love with the defensive game and our scheme. It's the same scheme we're running today. So it's been a long journey from Western Michigan to here. After Coach Fleck got there, I volunteered for one more year. I graduated, but there were no, GA jobs open. So I had to make a decision on what I was going to do. Decided I was going to volunteer. So, my parents weren't exactly thrilled because I wasn't going to make any money.
Yeah.
But I lived in the football facility. I lived in a closet, on the third floor of the football facility. I just said, hey, they're going to see that I'm always here and that I'm going to relentlessly work. And that got me my next job, and that got me the GA job. And I was a GA there from 15 to 16. And then Coach Fleck got the call to come to Minnesota, and thankfully I was able to come on the trip.
Yeah. Well, let's look at those first 2 years as a student assistant, because you mentioned obviously your first time really being on the field as a I don't want to say as a coach, but as a student assistant coach at the very least, right? Your experiences with the QBs. It was probably a great path to start this offensive journey, but pretty much past that year, man, you've been a D guy through and through. What advantages did you have to kind of see the game, especially from a head coach's lens? Did you get to see the game from that quarterback's point of view? That's helping you be a great DB coach and safeties coach, and I think you spent some time working with the D line as well. What advantages did you get from being in that room?
Yeah, it was a great experience because the quarterback is the most unique position on the football field where you got to know everybody's job. And, for me to really study that position and then move to defense and just have this different lens that I can look at the perspective that I have now on that, is huge because, and we had a great offense. We were, a spread offense. So, being able to take that and, now when we play spread offenses and have that idea in my mind of what they're attempting to accomplish, is huge, and that's what I teach my guys a lot of times now in the summer where we have this extra time is looking at the game from an offensive perspective,
Yeah.
and from a quarterback's eyes, from an offensive coordinator's, perspective and situations and things like that. And I think when you have that, you give yourself, an opportunity to be successful because, you just have that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I had somebody on. It was part of your 35 under 35 class. Coach Osborne. He's the receiver coach over at Stanford, and not very similar paths. I think football is unique in that everybody's path is just so different. But he did start off as a student assistant. Kind of knew he wanted to be a ball coach, just like you did from the jump. And we got to talk, and he was talking about how much he was up there, this, that, or the other, and it just kind of sparked a question. In this profession, we talk a lot about work-life balance, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're an 18 to 23-year-old college student that we probably have quite a few of these guys listening to this podcast as they're preparing to get in their career or maybe student assistant already. Was that even a term for you, in this profession, in the fall for you in college at 19, 20 years old? Were you taking advantage of Saturday night to go hang out? Or was it all ball for you? How did that work-life balance start for you as a college student?
Yeah, I think you have to have balance in your life. I'm a firm believer in that. But then you also, if you want something and you dream of something and have a vision, you have to have action as well.
Yeah.
But there is a balance. I mean, I had a great experience at Western Michigan University. I had a lot of friends from the south side of Chicago that went there. 5 of my roommates, we went to kindergarten together. So we were on a long journey together as well. And it was cool because I was able to have that balance with that life and then also football. And when it was football, all of those people, those were my biggest fans and, cheering me on to go get that dream. So, yes, there's definitely a balance, but like I said, if you have a dream and a vision, you have to have action. And at that time, my action, it was putting in a lot of hours because at the end of the day, I don't have, my dad didn't, coach, I don't have that, opportunity. I didn't know anybody in coaching, or bloodlines in coaching. So I had to go out and be different. And how do you do that? You have to put in a ton of hours. You have to put in a ton of work. You have to get people to notice you. And, but I would say that there was a lot of balance, but like I said, you got to have great action as well.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of said something there. It's a good segue to the next question, right? A lot of action. You got to put yourself in front of coaches and make them believe in you. What did you learn most? While working as a GA with Western Michigan, that allow for you to go and also be a great GA over at Minnesota once Coach Fleck kind of brought you over?
I would say the biggest thing I've learned is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And Coach Fleck taught me that at a very young age when I first got here. And I saw it through him, how he was on the field, what he demanded on the field was just as important as what he demanded in the classroom. And everything matters in this life. And for me, that was the biggest thing that I took from that. And then everything that I did, whether it was doing a film study, whether it was doing the laundry for the team, I was going to do it the best that anyone's ever done it.
Yeah.
That was my mentality because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So that advice and that how he showed that every single day and how he continues to show it every day.
Yeah.
That's why, I'm here. That's why we've had success at Minnesota is because of that. And everything matters here. And, we don't look the other way for things. Every single detail matters. We've had the highest, GPA in school history every single semester since we've been here.
Yeah.
There's no coincidence in the winning games that all correlates, and how you live your life. So, but yeah, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Absolutely. Now, you obviously have this, advantage that you created for yourself, as you mentioned. A coach's kid. You weren't all Big Ten or something. As a former football player, you came and really kind of created this path on your own. And so in 2014, 2015-ish, when you crossed the stage there at Western Michigan as an undergrad, probably a great opportunity to hop on Football Scoop and go find the next gig. Okay, I stick around in QC. Probably after that 1 year volunteering, probably a good time to go and hop on Football Scoop, or after those 2 years of GA. And really, when you look at it, man, you had this 6-7 year period of, being interviewed, not having to go call somebody to be interviewed, but you've been interviewed all this time. What was it that you felt like you did, especially when as Coach Fleck takes over the helm your senior year? What do you think that you did in that 3-year, 4-year, very informal interview that said, I got to bring this guy over to Minnesota with me?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but I'll go back to every task that I was given. I did it with elite detail, and I was going to give everything I had for that, no matter what, whether that was breaking down a game or, like I said, or doing the laundry or setting up a drill or drawing something on Visio, giving a study to Coach Fleck. Like I wanted to be the guy that if you needed a project, give it to me. Yeah. And I'm going to give it back in an elite level. And I think over the course of time, you get that trust factor then. Absolutely. What is trust? Time, consistency, and proof, right? And over time and being consistent, and then the proof of, all right, he's going to get the job done. Every opportunity I've had, fortunately, I've taken advantage of it. And I think that's what Coach Fleck, saw the most, is that I'm that guy. If he needs something, I'm going to deliver for him, whether that's, like I said, a film study or, our D-line coach, leaves, for the bowl game and now I have to coach the D-line. Yeah. I'm going to step up for that challenge for the football team.
No doubt about it, man. Well, just real quick, want to kind of paint the picture. This is maybe you probably got a little taste of how chaotic the business can be throughout your course of a student assistant, maybe probably your junior, senior year, we're just watching the coach's transition, stuff like that, a little taste, right? But now all of a sudden you're seeing your head coach leave to go take this job in Minnesota. What was that period from, him taking a job to you guys being in contact, saying, hey, man, come on over, pack your bags? What was that time period like? And then also, what was that call like?
That was, and I'm glad you asked that, because that was a wild ride. I would say a wild ride of 48 to 72 hours. I found out that Coach Fleck was going to Minnesota on, ESPN, and, watching the scroll at the bottom and the breaking news. And I remember sitting with my family thinking, like, oh my goodness, like who knows what's going to happen?
Absolutely.
And, the convention was that next, couple days. And, I knew he spoke at the convention, and I hadn't talked to him, and I didn't know how that worked. Do I reach out to him? Do I wait? Like, how does that, and, I'm just, I'm just a graduate assistant at that time. Right. And, I knew that he was going to be really busy, and I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go to his speech, and I know he's speaking. I said, I'm going to sit in the first 3 rows, right in the dead middle, and he's going to have to look at me.
Right.
And, I always, in team meetings, there's times where, like, he'll always glimpse up at me, and for whatever reason, and I'm like, this is like, he's going to have to see me.
Right.
And goes through that whole speech, doesn't look at me one time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to Minnesota. And, I wait afterwards after the speech, hoping that he's going to come out the door, and he ended up going out the back door.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't get to see him. And I just remember going back to the hotel room and, like, I feel that I am going to go to Minnesota, but I don't know. Right. And, I just remember I'm laying there in bed, literally just staring at my phone, and, nothing happening. I fall asleep, and all of a sudden that phone rings, and I look at it, and it says, Coach Fleck, and jump out of bed, answer the call. And, he gave me this long speech about, when I make it to being the head coach, he said, you're going to understand some of the decisions that I had to make. And he said, I'm building an elite staff at Minnesota, and I want Danny Collins on that staff. And at that point, I still get chills thinking about it. I immediately fell to the ground, and really, it was an emotional time for me, because it was, like you said, we talk about all the work that you put in as a student assistant, as an equipment manager, and all of that work. That was my interview for Minnesota. And I just told him that, hell yeah, that I'm coming. And once I got to Kalamazoo, I landed in Kalamazoo, packed up my car, and drove to Minnesota. Never been to the state of Minnesota, never been to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Absolutely, man. Well, what an awesome story. Especially getting that call. I mean, I think you look at maybe some of the not necessarily older guys, but the guys around our age and maybe a little bit older. We probably all have that moment in our career where it's like, man, this is the this is the call that was special. This was the one that gives me chills when I think about it, man. And so that's awesome that that opportunity comes. So you kind of have a unique deal there initially, right? Because you come in as a QC, but GA and QC again. Just explain that transition kind of back and forth there early on.
Yeah. Yep. So quality control. I came in as a quality control, and the thing about that was I had a choice. I could either become a quality control coach and you get paid a little bit more, but you're off the field. You can't have hands-on coaching through the NCAA rules. Be more involved in game plan and things like that. Or you could be a GA where, you're getting the GA salary, but you get to hands-on coach.
Yeah.
The other thing was you had to go to class, which obviously I didn't want to do at the time either.
Yeah.
So I went in as a quality control, and, when I realized being off the field, in practice and not being able to get to our players and to coach them, that's when I made the decision to become a graduate assistant that next season in 2018. And, with that, I was able to coach in the back end. We only had one defensive back coach at the time. So he had all 5 guys. So I was able to, run meetings and things like that as a GA and, coach on the field and coach the corners. So for me, that was another opportunity for, Coach Fleck to see what I can do. And, once I have a bigger role and, at that end of that 18 season, we had some staff changes and things like that. And I was able to be the full-time corners coach for the last 4 games. And, those guys, played their butts off and, we won the AFCA, versus Wisconsin for, the first time in, I think, 15 years.
Yeah.
And first time at Wisconsin since, I think 1994. Yeah. So we were doing things, that once again, it was just this group of guys all fighting together and doing, elite work for each other and playing for each other and coaching for each other.
Yeah.
That's when Coach Rossi took over. And, it's not like we changed the defense, but what we did is, the details rose. And that's the defense that you're still seeing today is that, really high detailed and high intelligent defense that flies around.
Yeah.
So, that was, my first taste of being a position coach for the last, 4 games.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, transitioned back to a senior analyst. And then, for the bowl game, then I get to coach the D-line because our D-line coach left.
Yeah.
And, we're going against Auburn and, our D-line, we held them, I think, to 60 yards rushing and 2 sacks. And, those guys played their tails off. And, it was just fun to coach a different position. I was in the back end and now all of a sudden I'm with the D-line. And, you're able to see it from their lens now. And then in 2020, I actually started helping with the linebackers and 21 helping with linebackers and now 22 and 23 being the safeties coach.
Yeah, so I kind of want to ask you a tough question that I know you now that you're kind of this full-time guy there on that staff, you worked your way up, that you probably feel a little bit comfortable talking about. I definitely want to ask you this in 2019, but I'm going to ask you this now. Like you go and you get the opportunity to coach the back end for 4 games, and you're a competitor. You're in this profession. You're on Coach Fleck's staff. I kind of only imagine how you're wired. To some capacity, you got to be saying, hey, man, after these 4 games, I'm going to see if I can be the guy this can be my position. What was that like on the front end of that and the back end of that? So, walking away from it, maybe not necessarily getting a job, and then really kind of fast forward to now and maybe seeing like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense now. What was that process like?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I would say, Coach Fleck brought me in his office multiple times about those things and saying that one day I'm going to hire you as a position coach.
Yeah.
And, that gave me the faith and I've always had so much trust in him that one day that was going to happen. Now, for me, and like you just said, I mean, it's human nature, right? We have this great run in the last 4 games and do a great job. And I'm thinking in my head, yeah, I'm going to be the corners coach, right?
Cool.
And then it doesn't happen. And then, 2019, have to take over the D line. We have a great game. They're motivated. They're playing awesome. And you know what? I got a shot to be the D line coach, and it doesn't happen.
Right.
You just can't lose faith. I think a lot of times, especially in this profession, guys it's right there in front of you. And although you may not get that opportunity, that sets up the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And for me, that just made me hungrier and made me want to work harder. And I mean, even today, I'm the safety coach I was last year is different than the safety coach I'm going to be this year. You're constantly wanting to be better every single day if you want to be great. And, although those times were a little bit frustrating, Coach Rossi and Coach Fleck, I mean, they've had a lot of conversations with me in those times. And I remember Coach Rossi because, I was in his office, just venting. And, I'm saying, I wanted to be a head coach by, the age of 35. And now, my clock, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And he's like, hey. He said, you don't control when your opportunity comes.
Yeah.
You just have to be as prepared as you are for when it does come.
Yeah.
And that moment really still sticks out to me.
Yeah.
Because at that moment I said, you know what, you're right. I'm just going to do everything I can to be as prepared as I possibly can be. And when the opportunity comes, then it comes and I run with it. But until then, I'm just going to work my butt off, and whatever job I'm in, I'm going to do that job to the most elite level that I could.
Yeah, and you do just that, right? And the end of this 2021 season, probably get another special text, phone call, or meeting with the boss man in the office that I'm sure probably give you goosebumps again. But you get this promotion that is, life changing. In terms of the financial piece, the resume piece. Just being associated with such a great staff at a full-time role. I mean, what an awesome call to get. Just walk us through kind of how it went down for you.
Yeah, we were actually Maria and I were actually going to see a movie at that time because it was January and we were off, and we're going to see the All American movie, the Kurt Warner movie. And we're walking out the door, and I'm scrolling through Twitter because that's what we do as coaches, right? We look at Twitter, and scrolling through, and all of a sudden I see that our safeties coach had taken the job at Rutgers to be the defensive coordinator. And I just said, oh my goodness. And Maria's like, what's happening? And I said, there's something may happen here pretty soon. And I just remember getting in the car and going to that movie. And the whole time, I couldn't tell you. I had to watch the movie later. I couldn't tell you what happened because I was just looking at my phone to see, once again, like, when's, is the call happening? Yeah. And the call didn't happen during the movie. But there were a couple parts in that movie where, they're talking about the underdog mentality and it was just clicking with me of like, man, what a cool moment that I'm watching this underdog movie and my life could be about to change here pretty soon.
Yeah.
And we get home that night, and Coach Fleck called me that night and offered me the job. And but like you said, I've never interviewed for a job here because my interview process was in the course of the 10 years that I've worked for Coach Fleck. But that was a really special moment. And I remember, Maria there and, her, crying her eyes out, because it finally happened. And it was really cool to share that moment with her. The first time coming to Minnesota was just by myself. And then I got to call my family, and having that opportunity to share that with her and her to see those emotions, and then, to call my family too. That was, I still have the FaceTime. I screenshotted the picture when I FaceTime my dad.
Yeah.
And he's got his arms up in the air, and he's always been my biggest fan. So being able to share that with him too, that was an emotional couple of days. But it was awesome.
Well, everybody wants the job, and then you have it, right? And then now all of a sudden, you got your own room. And so if there's any question, any teaching, all, 14 or 15, how many guys you got, all those odds, they go to you, right? And if a guy misses a tackle or misses a responsibility or gets beat over the top, it's on you now. So now all of a sudden you're in charge of the room. What was the challenge of, this is the first time, I know you had the 4 weeks and then the lead up to the bowl game to at least dip your toe in the water a little bit and have your own room. But what were some of the challenges for week in, week out, for a full course of a season, fall camp, all the way to, bowl game type situation to kind of run your room? What were some of the challenges in that first year?
Well, the first challenge was the recruiting side of it, because at that time, I hadn't really, did things with visits and things once guys were on campus. But other than that, I didn't really do a whole lot of recruiting. And that was always, going to be the question with me was, well, how good of a recruiter is he going to be?
Yeah.
If he's never done it. And I remember, Garrett Chernoff coming in and saying, hey, this is your recruiting areas. And, you're out in a week. And me thinking I've never, I recruited a couple Minnesota schools in 2018. But other than that, I had no idea of what that was going to look like. And, thankfully, all of our coaches, really took me under their wing and helped me with that. And, we were able to be really successful recruiting that, first season. So that was, the first challenge. The second challenge was, now your name is on that room.
Yeah.
And, for me, I've always been the guy that wants the pressure. And there's no better position than that safety position for that pressure. And, what really gave me confidence was when Coach Fleck, after he, gave me the job, he called me and said that he talked to all the safeties. And he said that they were all super excited and jacked up that I got my opportunity. And then when I had that first meeting with them, to see the fire in their eyes and to know that we're going to go into battle together, that was, for me, that was very comforting because they had my back and I had theirs.
Yeah.
And, the challenges, there's challenges every single week of what offense you're going against or wide receivers or things like that, or, being in the run fit. That's the cool thing about our position. We have a free safety, a strong safety, and a nickel. And all those guys they have a different skill sets and different jobs. And, being able to balance all that and, going into the fall and teach all that, that was a challenge. But then once like I said, we've been running this defensive system now since Western Michigan. So, that I had the advantage of coaching the D line, the corners, the linebackers, and now being with the safeties, to now teach them the big picture.
Yeah.
And, game in and game out, those were the challenges, obviously the schematic things, and then the relationship piece of it, being able to really, build that trust for them, because at the end of the day, I was hired to be the safeties coach and I had never coached safeties before. So I had to earn their trust.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And that's what I said day one from being there is that, listen, I know that I've never been the safeties coach before, but I promise you, I will be the best safeties coach in the country, because that's how I'm going to drive myself. And I said, you're going to be the best safeties in the country because that's how you're going to drive yourselves. And since that day, we've been, changing our best every single day. And, but, obviously there's recruiting, there's relationships, and there's schematics, and you have to balance those things and just learn every single day. I'm learning every day from Coach Rossi, from Coach Fleck with the big picture stuff and the motivation. And I think that's the biggest thing is, as coaches, I think a lot of guys, once they make it and they're position coaches, now they're comfortable. And for me, I am a sponge, and I want to learn every single day. I want to read. I want to listen to podcasts and listen to different coaches and their experiences to get better. And I think that's how you become a great coach, is constantly learn and constantly grow.
Yeah. No doubt, man. Well, you stole my next question, because I was going to ask you about the previous 9 years, how you just really didn't get any experience recruiting. Obviously, it's great to be at the FBS level, but that is the one thing from a recruiting standpoint is you kind of miss that opportunity. Whereas in some of the more divisional levels, you do actively get out on the road. So, I was going to direct you to that question, but since you kind of answered that, let me twist this around a little bit. knowing what you know now, as you finally dove in and realized, like, golly, I got to catch up on this recruiting stuff. What advice would you give to a GA that's kind of coming through and maybe having that D1 experience and not necessarily getting, some of the details that they're able to get? Like, what advice would you give them to help them prepare indirectly to be a great recruiter when they get their first position job?
Yeah, I think, well, number one, I think it's important for us as position coaches to help them with that.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough of that out there. Why can't a GA take, this pool of guys and recruit them?
Yeah.
And if we end up going on them, then, position coaches can take over. But I think that's a great opportunity for a GA, is to build those relationships and to talk with these kids. Because like I said, for me, talking on the phone with somebody was different because I just had never done it. So I think, for GAs and even student assistants, building those relationships with those recruits is huge for their development. If I can go back in time, I would have, demanded that I did more in recruiting.
Yeah.
Because of, when you get into it, you're like, oh my goodness, this is, a ton. I wish I was more prepared. And then once you actually go through it, now it's like, okay, I'm a pretty good recruiter now.
Right.
And, you just wish you had more of that experience. And I think a huge, way that we can help those guys is by letting them have those relationships. Anybody can lose a recruit. Anybody can win a recruit. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're the head coach, whether you're the DC, whether you're a position coach at GA. Everybody's got the power to either lose on a recruit or win on a recruit by what they said or how they made somebody feel. And I think the more experience that we give these guys, then the better recruiters that they'll have an opportunity to be.
Amen. Coach, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, before I let you go here, man, I really enjoyed our time together on this podcast. I would love to just kind of dive in. Number one, why did you apply for 35 under 35? Why would you encourage others to apply? And just real quick, just kind of run down your experience as you participated in this past year.
Yeah, first and foremost, what a great opportunity that was. And, to be surrounded with so many great coaches there and have that network now. That's the one thing for me is I've been, at Western Michigan and Minnesota. That's it. I've been with Coach Fleck for 11 years. I don't have a bunch of networks and connections and things like that. So for me, and I'm not a guy that's going to put a bunch of things on Twitter and things like that to get people to engage with me. I'm just not that type of person.
Yeah.
So for me, it was huge being in the 35 under 35 to form those relationships with guys and, to be around those, great young coaches, because you never know who they're going to become. You never know, one day you can be coaching with these guys. And, it was just a great experience. It was a great, number one, to meet people, because then, you go on the road recruiting and, I see some of these guys on the road.
Yeah.
And it was cool because, now you're able to talk about ball with them and now you're one of them, they're one of the guys. So, that was huge in terms of the relationship part. And then what I would say is the other opportunities with just what we were able to learn and the speakers that came in, from everywhere from coaches to finance and, things like that for your future and agents. That was huge for me because, I didn't know a lot of that information.
Yeah.
And, being a young coach, like I said, our main objective, I want to continue to grow. And for me, that was a huge opportunity to continue to grow and to learn from others and learn from my peers and guys that you may coach with here down the road.
Amen, Coach. Well, we appreciate you being a part of it. We appreciate everything you do for this great game. Before I let you go, though, I just want to give you the opportunity to share your Twitter account so guys can keep up with your career and maybe connect if possible.
Yep. So my Twitter is at Coach D _, at Coach _ D Collins. So that's where you can connect with me. It's a picture of me and my lovely new wife.
Awesome.
So yeah, go ahead and give it a follow. But I appreciate you having me on here. I'm really thankful for having this opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate you taking the time for me and taking the time for the coaches out here in this profession. Thanks so much. Best of luck, and look forward to seeing you in Nashville. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcast, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.